if you're living in India and own a vehicle or wish to own a vehicle in the near future, here's all you need to know. The government of India wants to get rid of petrol and diesel vehicles. India is aiming to reduce its crude oil import by phasing out vehicles running purely on internal combustion engines, or ICE engines as they are popularly called. Remember, India spends 16 lakh crore rupees on fuel imports annually and wants to reduce its fuel dependence. Then there is the net zero emission target of 2070. So the future car needs to be sustainable and not consume fossil fuels at all. All in all, the future of mobility is EVs, hybrids and flexible fuel cars. But the road ahead is not easy. It's a humongous task to replace all ICE engines with EVs, hybrid vehicles. One needs massive infrastructure, charging stations and affordable as well as sustainable cars and two-wheelers. Currently, there are 36 crore petrol and diesel vehicles plying on Indian roads and only 17 lakh of them are electric vehicles. What is the future of EVs looking like, and how can India get rid of ICE engines as they're currently operating in large numbers? To talk about that, joining us is Dilip Chenoy. He is the chairman, Bharat Web3 Association. Dilip, thank you very much for taking time out. Good to have you on the show. What are you making of government's very ambitious plan to get rid of ICE engines? When the road minister was speaking about the need to replace ICE engines with alternate fuel, EVs and hybrids, he did not really give a timeline. What, according to you, would be an appropriate timeline if one were to convert all of India's existing fleet into electric vehicles?
No, I think the challenge here is that timelines cannot be set for such ambitious plans, and there's a kind of a strategy to do that. But if while you were introducing the subject, you had actually quoted Amitabh Kant and what he had said. In a very recent event, which is the Shunya initiative, he had actually talked about that at least 2- and 3-wheelers, we could see significant 90% replacement of the new vehicles on the road by 2030. So getting rid of all the ICE vehicles on the road is one issue. The second thing, the strategy is that the new vehicles that come in, are there flex fuel? Are there electric? Are there hybrids? I think that's the other strategy which we will do. So in terms of the percentage of sales of either electric, hybrid or flex fuel vehicles, you will see that increasing over the years as we go forward. And as the existing vehicles near the 10-year or 15-year timeline, they will go off the road and they will be replaced most probably by flex fuel vehicles, hybrid or electric vehicles. That is a national strategy. But if you look at certain hotspots, if you take the metros where tailpipe emission is a challenge, right? So you will see a faster movement of commercial vehicles, last mile delivery vehicles, moving to electric rather swiftly. If you recall earlier, when the CNG was introduced, when sufficient models of CNG vehicles came into town, then I think the court said that all commercial vehicles have to go into CNG mode. So you might see some intervention based on this similar lines going forward for electric vehicles in metro cities and other cities where even hybrids would be a challenge because they do emit tailpipe emissions. So for each city and each type of vehicle, there will be a different timeline. But looks like electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers would be the first ones to actually reach some significant percentage, upwards of 90% by 2030.
Mr. Chenoy, talking specifically about passenger vehicles, the electric cars, I think the challenge continues to be that even though the numbers are adding up well and we've pretty much increased by about 91% as per FADA data when it comes to EV penetration, as a chunk of the total number of new cars sold in India, the penetration is still very small at just about 2.3%. So is enough being done, and are the suggestions being given by, let's say, the road minister about a GST reduction on electric and hybrid cars? Do these solid, bold initiatives need to be taken to actually increase that penetration, because we have a target of 30% passenger vehicles by 2030 to be electric or hybrid?
Yeah, so I think the incentives are at 5 different levels. We need to actually understand this. The first one was FAME 1 or FAME 2, where a direct subsidy was given to the buyer of such vehicles, and there a preference was given to those vehicles which are bought for last mile connectivity and mobility. The FAME 2 targets or FAME 3 targets for passenger vehicles were low. I think going forward, it will shift into the bus segment. The second set of incentives given to reduce the costs of the electric vehicle were those given by state governments, whether it is waiver of registration charges or added incentive to the FAME 1 or FAME 2 incentives that were announced by the central government, and of course the GST at 5%, etc. The third set of incentives actually came in to the manufacturers when they announced the production incentive scheme, where the manufacturers are given kind of a subsidy based on the sales and the increased investment that they do on these advanced vehicles, particularly electric vehicles. And more recently, the more recent announcement is the whole electric vehicle manufacturing policy, where they have allowed others to also come in and kind of match the incentives that are given under this policy to the level that is given under the product-led incentive scheme, including allowing them to import up to 8,000 vehicles at a reduced duty, but also giving incentives for localization of components and others here.
So specifically on that point, sir, sorry to interrupt. Specifically on that point about the incentives, 8,000 vehicles can be imported and sold, and the reduction of up to 15% now in the case of import duties. Is there a case being made specifically for a few brands, just like Tesla, to be able to drive into India simply because the policy is applicable for cars which cost $35,000 or more? So for a lot of regular car buyers who are not really who don't have the appetite for such large ticket investments, do we stand to lose or do we stand to gain as a country with such policy initiatives?
So the challenge here is that if you look at the penetration of electric vehicles across the categories in terms of percentage of the vehicles that are being sold versus electric, the surprising number that hits you is the higher end vehicles, right, have a greater switching to electric vehicles than the lower end vehicles, because there is not much option here. So the idea to attract people to invest in India and manufacture here is to be able to get the whole component ecosystem going and the manufacturing ecosystem going. And remember, these incentives given under this policy are limited both in terms of the number of vehicles that you can import and the first to achieve a certain level of investment. So once those numbers go, right, then the incentive will not be available to the others. So it is in everybody's interest, just not in Tesla's interest. It's in every electric manufacturer, vehicle manufacturer looking at India as a market to take advantage of this policy going forward. And I think the policy is done for any companies, just one company specific. A lot is being made that, okay, it's Tesla, etc. If they are the bellwether and they're the front runners, good, but I'm sure it's an opportunity for others to come in as well.
But sir, what do we do about batteries? Because batteries continue to be 50% of the cost of an electric vehicle, and not too many options available there. While we're talking about electric car manufacturers coming and making investments, not too much news has emerged yet on battery manufacturing also to take place in India, and that happens to be one of the major impediments for somebody making a high value purchase.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But the government also announced, along with the PLI scheme, a special alternate cell chemistry incentive there, and looking at alternate to lithium-ion batteries going forward. I think you are finding there, in fact, a lesser known secret about this whole thing is a lot of startups who are working at sodium-ion and different types of batteries systems, which you will see hitting the market fairly quickly. Yes, and oil we are dependent on the OPEC countries, lithium and lithium batteries we are dependent on another country. But I think we going forward you will see some new chemistries coming in and different types of batteries coming in. You will also see battery swapping coming in into different, not necessarily in commercial in passenger vehicles, but in the LCVs and two-wheelers and three-wheelers, you'll see that happening, which will actually reduce the cost of a battery that is required in a vehicle and reduce our dependence on imports and things like that going forward.
Okay, and until that happens, it does look like the existing policies have come in favor of two-wheelers and three-wheelers, but passenger cars not so much, because the penetration there is just under 3%. Dilip, do you think there is a need to relook at policies for owning and purchase of four-wheeler EVs? How do we make it more and better for people to actually go and buy them? How do we make it more affordable? And what should the government do at this point in time as far as FAME 3 is concerned? Because we haven't heard any sort of announcement. Perhaps that will come after the full budget of either the current government or whichever government comes next. But as far as FAME 3 is concerned, what are your hopes and expectations for four-wheelers and cars specifically?
Okay, so I think if you look at the four-wheelers in FAME 3, there will be a lot of emphasis on public transportation and buses and trucks there, because that is something which you need to push. And I believe, and all the OEs and everybody in the manufacturing space is saying that we need, at least for a limited time, more 2-3 years, we need an incentive to purchase to the end buyer to continue. It should not be phased out. And, if we can kind of look at how we can couple, the production-led incentive, the waiver and registration fees, the reduced GST, as you quoted Mr. Kothari saying, and also looking at charging infrastructure and other issues coming, and you require a holistic policy. And I think state governments also need to support the central government in extending facilities to the four-wheeler segment. Most of these state governments actually limited their incentives for four-wheelers and focused on two- and three-wheelers, because it was a feeling, and this is something which we need to dispense with, that a four-wheeler is kind of a upper middle class product and not really a common man's product. I think now, low cost electric vehicles are aspirational for many people, and it's not necessarily a luxury good or a high-end good there. Once we address that, then the rest can fall into place.
All right, Dilip Chenoy, thank you very much, sir, for taking time out for joining us here on News 9. Pleasure listening to you.
Thank you.